A $1 kit produced in Brazil could detect leprosy in its early stages and boost the chance of curing it. The disease affects the nervous system, and many sufferers say they face social stigma. But as Gabriel Elizondo reports, the new test could help eradicate leprosy.
You just have to look around this neighborhood in the Indian capital of New Delhi to see that leprosy still very much exists. People here suffer the lifelong effects of the disease. Many are cruelly disfigured. For centuries, sufferers have found themselves outcasts in society.
People don't speak to us easily. They hate us and won't talk to us.
Through years of concerted effort, it's almost been eradicated. But there were still more than 200,000 new cases diagnosed in 2011. Brazil, Indonesia, the Philippines, parts of Africa, and here in India are the hardest hit. Leprosy is curable, but it has to be diagnosed very early before the nerve damage takes hold in the body. Historically, it's a very difficult disease to diagnose because it mostly affects poor people in rural areas, many of whom don't even know they have it until their body has already become permanently disfigured, at which time it's too late, and then the stigma lasts forever. The challenge has always been effective early diagnosis, which is where this Brazilian company comes in. This is Orange Life, a medical laboratory in Rio de Janeiro that's producing a pioneering new test for leprosy. It's about the size of a thumb drive and works much in the same way as a pregnancy test. Crucially, it's quick, accurate, and above all, cheap. The makers hope to sell it for as little as $1.
It's a very important global issue, and the price must be low. And we are a strange company because we really believe in our mission. We really believe that we must give the chance to the people to use our test.
The test was developed by researchers in the United States. By making it cheap and simple, they hope to identify and treat new cases much more quickly.
Tests like this needs to be instituted on a global basis. And it'll be incredibly helpful in monitoring patients and diagnosing new cases and initiating a new therapy.
For the leprosy patients in India and elsewhere, the new testing method comes too late, but it's still very welcome.
The people whose hands and feet have been damaged already, they can't benefit from medication anymore. But for the people who were diagnosed early on, it's beneficial for them.
A breakthrough that will hopefully bring the world a little bit closer to finally eradicating the disease once and for all. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
I am joined now by Malcolm Duthie. He is a senior scientist investigating leprosy at the Infectious Disease Research Institute. He joins me now from Seattle, Washington. Malcolm, good to talk to you. First of all, congratulations. Tell us about the work your team contributed to this test, and then I'm going to beat you up a little bit.
Okay, so we were tasked approximately 10 years ago to actually develop a vaccine to prevent leprosy. And through that program, we identified the need for an early diagnosis. It's well documented by the World Health Organization and various clinicians that the earlier leprosy is diagnosed, the easier it is to treat and the better the outcome for the patient. As part of our program, we identified several candidates that could provide a diagnosis, and through obtaining samples that were collected in the Philippines in the mid-1980s, we were able to identify particular proteins identified by antibodies in patient serum that could diagnose leprosy about a year before the emergence of clinical symptoms. And so that's obviously very critical for a better outcome.
So Malcolm, I think somewhere in that answer you probably have given me the seeds of the answer to this next question. Why has it taken so long to develop this test, particularly given that early detection is such a key to successful treatment?
Well, Mycobacterium leprae, the causative agent of leprosy, is a very strange bacterium. Nobody has to date figured out how to actually culture it in the lab. So in 2000, the whole genome of Mycobacterium leprae was sequenced, and that really gave researchers the tools to look at specific components within that genome and begin to mine in and see what could be vaccine candidates, what could be diagnostic candidates. And we've used that information to really push our program forward.
Yeah. So Malcolm, the test is certainly affordable. Do we have the figure right? Just $1? Will it be widely available is the question.
Yeah, we really need to make efforts to make it widely available. We certainly have production whereby we can manufacture millions of these tests. The next step, as you've identified, is actually getting it out and into practice. And we're going through various negotiations to try and do that. Ultimately, at $1 a test, we can envisage going into leprosy-affected regions, and for relatively small amounts of money, $50,000, $100,000, we can treat entire small cities in the likes of the Philippines, Brazil, India, and really get a good handle on how big the problem is, because it's widely regarded as being heavily underreported right now. The cases that are reported are those that are actually going to the clinic and being clinically diagnosed. Some studies have identified that the numbers may actually be 6-fold higher.
Wow. Malcolm, how early would you recommend testing, and on what basis?
So the World Health Organization recommendation right now is that once a patient is identified by their clinical symptoms, their family members and their household members are screened every 6 months. That requires an expert clinical exam. It requires a large degree of logistics in going into these poor communities and telling people, hey, can you stay home from work today so we can actually come and examine you?
Yeah.
That's a big undertaking. With a simple diagnostic test, we could theoretically go in much quicker and much more regularly for the same kind of costs.
You're working on a vaccine. How's the work going?
Yeah, that's right. It's going very well. We have our lead candidate is actually in the stage of process development, as we call it right now. We're looking to go into phase 1 clinical trials by the end of this year or beginning of next year. So they're simple safety trials. Actual implementation will be a few years down the line if everything goes right. But we see that as accompanying our diagnostic test in really providing a strong foundation to really get after the last remnants of leprosy.
Malcolm, well done to you and your team. Malcolm Duthie, he is a senior scientist investigating leprosy at the Infectious Disease Research Institute, joining us from Seattle in Washington. Malcolm, thank you.